Well, hello, my name is Mariano Morales. I am currently in my third year undergraduate studying instrumental music education at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. With me are two prolific, amazing, inspirational people that cultivate a sense of emotion throughout the field of music, and I'm so excited to talk to them. Joined with me is award-winning performer, master clinician, Dr. Jonathan Keeble, who currently serves as the flute professor at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, as well as the chair of woodwinds, brass, and percussion, as well as Dr. Joel Puckett, also an amazing award-winning composer, educator, who serves as an associate professor of chair of music theory, ear training, keyboard skills at the Peabody Institute of Johns Hopkins University. So welcome both. Hopefully y'all are doing good. I am a bit nervous, but I am very excited to have a conversation with both of you regarding Puckett's piece Shadow of Sirius, as the Wind Symphony will be performing that next Friday. So I would just like to start off with just an opening statement about the piece. How would you like audiences to respond to the Shadow of Sirius directly? Puckett first.
Um, you're doing great. You got nothing to be nervous about. Uh, yeah, the Shadow series is a piece that really changed my life. It's 13 years ago last week it premiered. Um, I wrote it really as a way to heal myself after a particularly traumatic event. And it's been my experience that audience members uh, consciously, if they read the program note or know something about the backstory, or unconsciously, if they haven't, do respond to the sort of sense of grief and then a turn towards hope that the piece takes towards the end. Um, I think that there's something in the music that helps people get in touch with that kind of sadness and sorrow that we all carry around, but are sometimes reticent to talk about.
And listening to the piece and reading through the program notes, you mentioned a lot about the use of the poem from the Shadow series and using those themes of sorrow, longing, isolation. And directly, you talked to Dr. Keeble. How do you approach a piece like this and like performing this piece in order to convey these emotions?
It's a very good question, and it's interesting to me. I played the piece not long after it premiered with Amy Porter at University of Michigan. We were one of the co-consortium funders of the piece, and at the time, I really loved the piece, and it was something I really enjoyed working on. But we grow and we age, and then life experience changes us. And about a year ago, I almost lost my son to a near fatal accident, and it's something I wake up with, living through every day. And I find that playing Shadow of Sirius now has different meaning for me, and it's something I hope I can bring to the audience. That these personal experiences, and that's what's wonderful about music. It's just this nonverbal communication that you hope you move something inside them. And I certainly know that it moves me to play it. And there are moments, in fact, when I'm wonderful even able to finish the piece.
Mm.
It's such an overwhelming experience.
Thank you. Moving on to mentioning about the consortium portion of the premiere. Could y'all just explain what is a consortium and how is it different than regular premiere?
Yeah, sure. First, Jonathan, I'm so sorry to hear that about your son.
Thank you.
And
He's doing okay now. So,
that's great.
but
That's great to hear. And I'm so happy to share this piece with you and for us to take that and share it with the community at University of Illinois. Um, yeah, so the consortium process is one that's been around forever, but the wind band community has been really quick to make it sort of the standard fare about how new pieces get created. So, under normal circumstances, you would say maybe the New York Philharmonic comes and commissions a piece, and then they, or most likely a specific donor or group of donors, fund the entire commission fee, which is sometimes a large sum of money. But when we're talking about trying to create really a new medium for the wind band, no individual who's involved with the wind band has that kind of money on their own. So what it allows to happen is everybody who wants to participate puts a little bit of money. And what that does is it allows everyone to share the burden of the cost for the artist me to create the piece, which is good for the composer and good for the individuals. But even better than that, it allows for a community of people to all be involved in establishing a performance history for the piece relatively quickly, because what you get for your money is the right to perform that piece under a period of exclusivity. So Shadow of Sirius, for example, that piece, I think it was 13 or 14 groups that went in together to commission it. And then they had the right to perform that piece for the first year exclusively, most of which did, not all, but most under that time period. And then after that, when it goes out to the general public, there are then 10, 12 performances that have all happened and provides a variety of musical choices that then other people on the outside who weren't part of the consortium can then look at and find little details that they want to bring out in their performances. I personally have found that to be the most exciting aspect of consortium commissions. The money is one thing, and a completely non-artistic thing, although it's nice to be able to, pay the doctor and the dental bills or whatever. But this idea of quickly establishing a variety of musical choices so that we move away from the idea that the composer's intent is so specific and it has to be this way, because frequently that happens when there's just one premiere performance and then everyone is just looking at that, and people start to assume that the way it was played in the premiere is the composer's intent, rather than what we probably all really deep down know, which is it's a possibility of a realization of the composer's intent.
Thank you. And with Dr. Keeble, you mentioned how you partnered up with Amy Porter, being a part of the commission. Could you talk more about what drew you into this piece? You mentioned how you really enjoyed the piece, but what made you so compelled to be a part of the consortium?
Well, I have to admit that I was taken by surprise. I didn't know we were a member of the consortium until our then director of band said, "Hey, how'd you like to play this piece?" So it completely caught me by surprise. But Amy is a friend of mine, and I really very much enjoyed listening to University of Michigan and her performance of it at the time.
Yeah, thank you. And Dr. Keeble again, could you describe the process of preparing to be a soloist in front of like a large ensemble, especially with the layout of where the flutes are in the balcony and you being center stage? How could you talk more about that process of being like the soloistic feature of this piece?
That's a good question, Mariano. One of the things I enjoy about this piece is the flute choir component, even though I have to say that I'm an avowed hater of flute choirs. But I think it's a really ingenious use of the flute, and it provides both kind of a chorus and kind of like the ancient Greek choruses in the distance for the soloist, and provides a neat kind of counterbalance to what I'm doing on stage. And what I enjoy about this piece, among the things I enjoy about this piece, is that the flute is not an instrument that can really compete successfully with a wind band. And what Joel has done with this is given the flute lots of opportunities to kind of be a soloist without accompaniment, and then lots of opportunities for just kind of a chamber wind-like experience behind the soloist. And then there are, of course, moments where uh, Joel's used the full range of the flute in the piece, and so we can compete with most instruments when we're playing high Ds, and given plenty of opportunity to play those in this piece.
Thank you.
But I'm not a monster. There's no E flat. I'm not.
That's
I'm not
right.
Prokofiev, right?
I'm grateful for
Yeah.
that.
With Dr. Puckett, you mentioned in your interview with the University of Michigan that you use the choir as a biological amplification of the flute. And could you talk more about how did you come up with that process of using spatial dimensions and like just like different planes to convey like volume and projection of a soloist.
Yeah, sure. So I never thought of it as biological amplification. I thought of it as biological delay. And so right in 2008, 2009, everyone was starting, not everyone, but lots of people my age, composers, started messing around with looping pedals, which are now sort of ubiquitous. But it was sort of in its nascent stage at that point. And then I saw people, I mean, it's been done a long time. Xenakis was messing around with sort of speakers in the round, and then playing electronic music within the round, but using the amplification. And so I thought, well, the greatest attribute that a wind band has is the human power. There's just a bunch of humanity on the stage. So what if I could create what is basically a delay pedal, but do it with people rather than a pickup mic and a patch? And so that's what really started me thinking down the road of trying to take what at that time was kind of cutting edge technological solutions and creating musical impulses and translate it into this attribute that I had available to me. And then from there, the metaphorical meaning of the what lies in the shadow turns out to be many things rather than just one star. And I like that notion that the themes actually always start in the balcony and then ride across and then eventually get given to the soloist, who then gives it back to them. And there's this a metaphor there for teaching as well. So I liked the idea of the professor being on stage working with presumably a studio that is mimicking their concept of sound, right? Both in the studio and then in this performance as well. So it's like it becomes a healthy Ouroboros, right? Where constantly circling on itself.
You know, it's interesting you say that, Joel, because I was just yesterday in a rehearsal, I was thinking of how proud I was of my students who all sounded the same. Um, and, you know, we seek individuality and a voice, but in this case, we want there to be a uniformity of sound across. And I was thinking, boy, these kids can play. So thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. It's one of the things that like I'm not sure if I really had that level of conceptualization when I was writing it, but over the I don't know how many hundreds of performances I've heard of this thing, but I'm always struck by, wow, that turned out to be a really good idea, because I'm constantly struck by how the concept of sound is consistent usually from the soloist to the members of the studio that are in the balcony. It's just a really cool thing.
Thank you. Y'all have mentioned both the use of emotions and personal connections that people have with music, and I just wanted to open up the discussion how this role of aesthetics, music aesthetics, and emotions influence your music making, because listening to a lot of Dr. Puckett's pieces, Evelyn's Lullaby, Sirius, Shadow of Sirius, and listening to a lot of Dr. Keeble's pieces that he's performed from his albums, there is a strong sense of emotion, and I just want to open up the floor of like, how does that influence you?
I can take the lead on that. You know, it's that's a tough one to answer. You know, and I think I alluded to it earlier. You know, so you bring experiences to your performing, and I would assume to your composition too. And you know, there's certain works that just resonate deeply within one's soul, and they draw up those experiences when you're playing them. Whether it's birth, death, you know, love, any of a variety of different things that we as humans go through. And I think that those experiences, when they connect with a particular work, as I mentioned, this one does for me, really shape what you do musically in ways that are obviously, well, not obviously, hopefully audible and hopefully spiritual.
Thank you.
I think that's exactly right. I mean, if we want to really get into sort of aesthetic discussion, it can be complicated because eh, there's a reasonable argument for two people to hear the exact same sound and have completely different reactions to it. right? Based on the context of their listening lives or their personal, like every little bit goes into how we respond to music, right? Um, but I will say that emotion, particularly the piece that I wrote directly before this piece, is a piece called "A Perch for Vespers 9." And it was the first time I sort of hit on this idea of being vulnerable and trying to make transparent, vulnerable sounds can really equate to trying to express transparent, vulnerable ideas, right? In non-musical ideas. So you mentioned Avalon's Lullaby, and there's a connection between Avalon's Lullaby and the Shadow of Sirius, which may seem obvious. You know, I wrote the Shadow of Sirius when we lost a child, and then I wrote Avalon's Lullaby maybe 10 months later when we had our daughter, Avalon. And so it was the realization, because my wife was pregnant when I was finishing up the Shadow of Sirius. So we had sort of come through the other side, but we were still had that pit in our stomach, like, is this gonna happen? In that third movement, I had the realization that we wouldn't have the hope of this new baby had we not lost the first baby. Like, we had to have the pain in order to have this hope for what happens next. And so in Avalon's Lullaby and the sort of second half of the piece, where it sort of goes into that dreamlike state, the chaconne from the second movement of the Shadow of Sirius is laid underneath of the sort of happy dreamlike music, because I wanted to put in this Avalon's Lullaby that little tinge of sorrow that we needed in order to have this happiness of this little girl. So whether anyone else picks up on that or not, it's important to me, because when I hear it, I can't help but be transported back to how I was feeling when I was working on that 10-10-10 pattern in the chaconne of the second movement.
Thank you. A final question for Dr. Puckett. How would you like performers to approach a Joel Puckett piece?
Yeah, this is I get up on my soapbox. Thanks. So I don't need you to try to make it the way you think I want it. Right? I can stay at home and push play on any recording I've got. I'm looking for unique musical insights into the foundation that I laid down 13 years ago. Right? So I say it often, like, I'm not the guy who wrote these pieces. I used to be the guy who wrote those pieces, and I might have more insight into those pieces than most people, but I'm not that guy anymore. So why not try to do something interesting and unique, and something that's coming from your soul as a reaction to what I've put on, to what that person put on the page, rather than, you know, is this tempo okay? Is like, you know, it says 69. Are you sure the recording is 67 and a half? Are you sure that 60? It's like, you know, I want to hear people on the day making big swings, bold choices. That's what I want.
Thank you. Final question for Dr. Keeble, kind of alluding to the same question. How would you like audience members to approach your sound, and what would you like to be remembered after this performance?
Just hopefully that people leave thinking, boy, I really am glad I spent time with that piece, that ensemble, and those players.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
Well, thank you so much, both of you, for this amazing interview. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I am really excited to hear the piece, and yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Joel.
Thank you. Can't wait to hear you.
Likewise.